Well, welcome to the Veterinary Practice Management Expert Panel, part of the Veterinary Business Institute's annual Expert Panel webinar series. This event brings together veterinary leaders and practice owners to help you refine your management strategies. In this 1-hour live session, our panelists will share actionable insights on strategic goal setting, improving client retention, and using data to streamline operations. Tailored specifically to the unique challenges and opportunities in veterinary practices, this event provides an excellent opportunity to gain new perspectives and practical solutions for sustainable growth in your practice. I'd like to go ahead and just welcome our panelists to the webinar. We have with us tonight Debbie Boone, Dr. Natalie Marks, and Dr. Christie Cornelius. I'll introduce them a little more in a moment, but it is great to have you here with us tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad to be here.
Today, with our Veterinary Practice Management Expert Panel, we're going to dig into, the title is Driving Practice Growth Through Strategic Planning and Goal Setting in 2025. That is a mouthful. That sounds a little heavy, but we're going to make it, I'm very confident, we're going to make it a little lighter and make this something. I know that one of the things that's important to all of us here is that what we don't just talk and for the sake of learning, but we share for the sake of discovering something we can put into play right away, something we can apply right away, that isn't just a theory. This is practical, hands-on, executable stuff that can make a difference tomorrow in your practice. I think we're going to start with Debbie. Debbie, your success in fostering client-centered teams is remarkable. What are the key elements of effective communication and hospitality-based training that veterinary teams can implement to build trust with clients and improve service delivery? That's a big question, but I'm sure
we only have an hour, right, Michael?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think when we understand that we're better at client service, we're actually improve our practice life. It's really self-serving when you think about it, that we have reduced conflict. So some of the stressors that we normally would have is veterinary team members are greatly reduced. Our compliance increases, so that helps us feel better about the service and the work that we do, not to mention the fact that improved compliance does drive revenue. We have improved retention of clients and team members. You mentioned that in the introduction. And when I tell people that I had most of my CSRs who worked for us for over 20 years, they're stunned at that because it's a 44% turnover position. But when you build a team like that, your clients are seeing the same faces every time. And there's a great deal of trust that starts at the front desk and transfers right on through the team. Our clients are our best raving fans. And when we give them a wonderful experience, what happens is they go out into their communities and they tell their friends who are like-minded and probably of the same socioeconomic level that they must come to our practice because that's the only place to go. And we have a sales force in the community that's actually driving revenue to our hospitals. Now, you ask about specific things that I usually use when I'm talking about creating a great service experience for clients. And one of the elements I like to teach is dispersonality profiling. I feel like so many times we learn these things to look at ourselves, but the way I've always taught it is, you need to know yourself, but you can use those same tools to figure out the client in front of you and to present your case for medical care in a way that they need to hear it rather than the way that would suit you. So learning those kind of skill sets is a great improver of client service. The other thing I teach a lot is neuroscience, because when we understand reactivity and how our brain works, we're much more capable of heading off conflict before it happens. My goal is to not have it happen at all because we have emotional intelligence and self-awareness enough to not start our clients on fire, which basically we do a lot of times in vet med, just inadvertently because we don't know any better. I think particularly about during the pandemic, when people would call the practice and would look for an appointment, And they go, well, we don't have anything for 3 months. It's such a negative statement. I'm sure it was true, but it was decidedly unhelpful for stressed out people. And how we present that information makes all the difference in the world. So there's that training. I think a lot of the problems that we might have in veterinary medicine, and I think we just have it in general in the world, is most of us don't get great customer experiences anywhere we go. So we don't even know what it looks like. And if we are trying to train our team to a standard they've never experienced, then it takes a lot more effort to teach them what that looks like, and more importantly, what it feels like to have a great experience and to build that customer journey.
Thank you, Debbie. That the two things that really jumped out at me, that the customer experience. What is a great customer experience? And as you say, these days everything seems so negotiable, with the internet being a moving target, and who your favorite is, and this and that, and there. What is the constant? What is the and one of the things that jumps to mind for me is, what's your vision for a customer experience, and how do you cast vision in your organization? And vision leaks every 30 days. So doing it once a year doesn't kind of cut it, and I love the way you're approaching that that conflict can be your friend and it can empower it. But a healthy conflict is awesome when it's not a noun to be afraid of,
Exactly. So, yeah, exactly. And so many of us try to avoid conflict, but when we learn to step into difficult situations or uncomfortable situations before they actually explode, we can head them off and resolve that. And when we're observing people, it's one of the kind of three-legged stools I teach of customer service. Observe people and find out what their reactions are going to be. Are they confused? Are they getting impatient? Let me move into that rather than go hide around the corner, which is what our instinct tells us to do. I was reading Natalie's article about her trip to Kilimanjaro, and she was talking about fear. And so much of this reactivity has to do with fear and limbic brain responses. And it's so important to teach our teams those things, that when we're observing people, we're watching their limbic brain reactions, and then we're appropriately managing their emotions and our own emotions. And always, the customer service experience is personal. You can't cookie cutter things. And we want to make sure that we are paying close attention, deep attention to people, and teaching people how to ask open-ended questions, deeply listen to people, not distractedly run them through this meat grinder of get them in and get them out. We focus so much, especially on the front desk, on task. We don't teach connection. And that's what we need to do. We are working a lot with technology now. AI is coming on, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that tonight. But my vision for all these tools is that it just frees us up from mundane, what I call monkey work, and gives us the freedom to actually have time to connect with the humans in our world.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's funny. It just, my head went right to the song. What the world needs now is love, sweet love, and some structure and some vision. And thank you for that share. I want to go to you, Dr. Cornelius, next. And Doctor, you've highlighted the transformative potential of generative AI in veterinary care. How can veterinary practices integrate this technology to enhance operational efficiency and improve patient outcomes? Now that I know it's a hot topic. I know that, again, what Debbie said, we only have an hour. I know but I just might want to suggest maybe just in your response, just a quick, your definition of what AI is, just so people have a common denominator to work from, and then an answer would probably be great.
Yeah, sure. The short answer is love, sweet love, no matter what.
There
right?
you go.
What it is. And that's what this whole thing is about. And I know a lot of this, we are having to change really rapidly now. And this, I might get asked to talk every month or two, and I have to go back and I have to revamp what I learn about these things. And so that in itself presents a huge challenge. But when it comes to AI, and I think what we know and what we've experienced so far is just the tip of the iceberg. And it might be that way for a while. And I know we're excited about big things. But I think kind of working through some of these lower impact disruptive innovations and finding a way to create efficiencies and ways to create more sustainability within our companies is kind of what we're focused on right now. And so to do this, companies need to describe some operational areas that need improvement. And so to determine that, they can choose to focus on things like automating repetitive tasks, as Debbie had referred to, enhancing diagnostics, when it comes to our lab work and x-rays, imaging and things like that. Making personalized, client communications. I think that can be a really, really helpful tool for us. And can help us to address some common questions about pet health and treatments for our clients. And then, another aspect of that is, our data-driven decision-making as well. And so really kind of getting into the nitty-gritty of data and implementing systems in order to create, common questions and things like staffing schedules and predicting patient demand patterns, things like that. And so it's a matter of really choosing what's going to be most impactful based on what your current situation is within your veterinary practice. And I think for successful integration, I typically recommend starting small, using, pilot programs, tailor them to some specific needs. Training your staff on technology and seeking feedback. I'll talk there. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Cornelius. That was great. I hosted a podcast, I think earlier this week. We're talking, and one of the things they brought up was this idea. He was actually using it with emails and helping write emails that weren't written for another medical professional, but written for somebody maybe with a grade 10 or 12 education, so they could actually understand what was being written and building out the primary structures. And he calculated he was saving 4 hours a week on emails. I mean, I hadn't thought of it in such a soft way, but it's as you say, it's just the tip of the iceberg, and it's moving like light speed. But so did the internet, and so here we are. So let me jump in, Dr. Marks. I have a question for you, and let's start with your advocacy for fear-free practices has transformed patient care. How can veterinary teams address fear, anxiety, and stress to build stronger client relationships and improve team morale?
Well, thanks for asking this question, because it is one of the things I am most passionate about in veterinary medicine. I know Debbie is as well. Fear-free, in my opinion, is one of the initiatives that really transformed the way we practice as clinicians and as hospital teams, not just because it's decreased workplace injury, not just because it allows us to be more thorough with our physical exams and our diagnostics, but truly it normalized that our patients need emotional health being monitored and treated and cared for and prevented, right? The downgrade. So it sort of gave us a reason to think more holistically that we're taking care of physical and emotional health of our patients, of our pet parents, and also in a sense of our teams. And so I think there's 3 ways that practices can take the tenets from fear-free and really about reducing fear, anxiety, and stress in our patients and the people that care for them, which is the pet parent and our veterinary teams. So the first thing I always want to encourage veterinary teams to do is to understand body language of dogs and cats. They're not the same. They act differently in different situations. Some flee, some freeze. The classic, hissing, swatting cat is not the first reaction. That is the last resort before a cat is sort of terrified for their life. And our mentality of this, I don't want to work with this mean cat, I hope really changes to this empathetic, I feel so bad for this very fearful cat. and what that family is also going through watching that reaction. So I think it's imperative that our teams continue to be trained on how to read subtle changes in body language. It helps in the physical exam so we can do better exams, more thorough exams, again, diagnostics. It helps strengthen the human-animal bond. It helps our teams feel more relaxed, especially working with feline patients, which we need more to see the veterinarian, right? It also just helps better emotional health for every creature in that exam room. Whether it's your team member, the pet parent, the patient, everyone in there. So I think that's the first thing, is understanding body language and what it means when there is a trigger that creates stress of any kind. The second is sort of what I alluded to at the beginning, which is normalizing emotional health of our patients. It's been a long time, and sadly, there is still sort of a stigma around human mental health, disease and illness and treatment and therapy and diagnostics. I think that's sort of carried over, as most things do, right? It takes about 10 years for us to sort of get to where human medicine is. But I think Fear Free has done an amazing job of normalizing that our pets feel this too. So the more that we can do that with our pet parents, the more they will understand when our teams choose to pause during an exam or postpone or recommend a pre-visit pharmaceutical like trazodone or gabapentin or Boncat or alprazolam or anything to help our families, and mostly our patients, of course, travel to and from with reduced fear, anxiety, and stress. But that also allows our teams to not feel so hesitant to make those decisions. Every time I lecture on Fear Free, I get a really authentic question, I'll just say, which is, I'm really scared to say that. What if a client leaves? What if a client gets upset? To Debbie's point, what if there's conflict? And I say two things to that. It's all about education. Knowledge is power. So the more your team is unified in this mission, and you believe truly in the mission that we don't want to add to this patient's fear, anxiety, and stress, the more your clients will see that you're passionate and you're doing the best for their patient, and they will understand. But it can't be a half-hearted commitment, and it can't be just the veterinarian and nobody else. And it can't just be one technician who's on a mission, right, and not supported by the team. It's got to be a whole unified mission. And then the third thing is to remember, another pushback sometimes is it's going to take more time. It's going to cost more money. It's going to take so much training. But we really do know, we have proof. There's a fabulous study that came out in 2019 from Moody looking at shelter medicine. And they took over 50 cats and they had cats in full body restraint, like we used to do, versus cats that were passively restrained and low stress handling. The cats that were full body restrained, it took twice as long to do an exam. Those cats were 8 times more likely to escape. The pet parents that were in the room were visibly stressed and had stress reactions. And those cats did not want to be touched afterwards. So their escalation of stress and the duration of stress was much longer than expected with passive exams. So we know that when we do create this, and I think to Debbie, what she was saying in regards to, our client word of mouth and referral, that's what we're aiming for. When you have that experience in the exam room where we're promoting physical and emotional health of every creature in the exam room, that often leads to the best client experience. That client journey is positive, relaxed, thorough, detailed, calm, and everybody leaves that exam room feeling better. The veterinary team feels better. It's an easier experience. They feel they did the best that they could. And the pet parent leaves seeing their pet parent or their family member relaxed, and they feel confident and they heard what was being said. They're not emotionally distracted by what's happening to their pet. So I think all of those things really can add to the client experience, the patient experience, but equally important, the veterinary experience, because we want our days to be good too.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Dr. Marks. And I had a comment there from Valerie just saying, thank you. Well said. I've never had a conflict educating clients about Fear Free. No client wants their animals stressed. And Kristen was just thanking all of you for hosting today, taking the time to be here. So, it's as soon as I discovered this Fear Free certified practitioner thing, as soon as I heard this, I took this into workplace organizations and challenged them. I said, we could create a fear-free workplace.
Mm.
And what would that look like? We would engage healthy conflict, and we would resolve unhealthy conflict. And people nobody wants to be stressed. Nobody wants to be in conflict. And, like what I heard you say is we're passionate about holistic well-being of everybody in the room, not passionate about just executing the medical steps that have to be done, albeit some of them really do have to be done. But
well, I challenge my pediatrician every time I go, because I'm like, why are they teaching me to hold my child like this while they stab them with vaccines? And they wonder why they have a negative experience.
Yes.
A sticker doesn't fix that, So, I think that maybe this is one area where the human profession can learn a little bit from how we treat our patients.
Thank you very much. Debbie, I'm going to come back to you. Debbie, as a specialist in team empowerment, what strategies can veterinary leaders use to create a culture of accountability and ownership that fosters long-term success for their practice?
Well, going back to Natalie's point in fear-free, one of the things I've advocated for my whole career when I've been training managers is what I call the puppy training theory of people management. And that is to recognize and reward good and positive behavior and quickly correct when people are making a mistake. We have a tendency as leaders in our practice to not correct in the moment and to let things fester. And it's the equivalent of, the dog starts to squat on the rug and you say, well, when I do your performance review, I will go and tell you not to pee on the rug anymore. And it's a very ineffective way to manage. So we want to correct in the moment. But we also want to have, as leaders, an awareness that we need to be finding positive things that our staff is doing and making sure that we're acknowledging that. I am on a lot of social media groups, as I'm sure that Christie, we know each other from LinkedIn, and Natalie too. We're all on social media groups and we're all listening to this feedback. And one of the consistent messages of teams is their good work is not acknowledged and they feel a lack of appreciation. And rewards do not have to be financial. In fact, most people don't work for money. And when I say that, people go, well, I do. And no, you don't really, because I've seen people who will make a lot of money who still don't love their work. And I've seen people volunteer, and I'm sure all of us have done this, to do something that we are passionate about, and we don't get paid for it at all. But we offer a great deal of effort to this volunteer duty. So I would suggest to people that they pay close attention to how they can positively reinforce their teams when they are giving great service, when they are educating the fear-free behavior knowledge to clients, and when they are utilizing a new tool that we brought in, because, as we all know, change is hard for human beings. It makes us very tense. Talk about a stressful situation. Just change your PIMS and watch your whole staff melt down. And then how do we reward that behavior? Well, we've got to encourage our team members to take ownership and creation of ideas. I said earlier, we focus so much on tasks. And as managers, I was guilty of this when I was a new manager, is we think we have to think of everything. We think we have to do it all. And that's the same thing with practice owners. So as a consultant, when I'm coaching practice owners, I work hard to teach them to delegate and to find people who are impassioned on a subject and love to do those things, and then empower those people to do those things. So I think we need to, as leaders in our practice, start to leverage appropriately. We talk a lot about leveraging our technicians, or the lack, of our leverage of licensed and credentialed technicians. But if we think about, we don't even leverage our CSRs appropriately. And this truly was one of the reasons that Dr. Jill Clark and I co-founded NAVR, and then dragged Rhonda Bell into helping us with this. But NAVR is the North American Association of Veterinary Receptionists. And we realized that if we could empower our CSRs to do basic triage, to answer simple medical questions that they answer every day, all day long, or they go ask somebody every day, all day long, how much more time would our medical team have to do the things that only they can do? So we can leverage and reward our CSRs, and that's how you get to keep them for a very long time and let them build relationships with your clients. Then you're also freeing up your technical team to do the work that they want to do. And then certainly your doctors are free not to have to answer what age does a puppy get its vaccines for the 500th time today, because they need to do smarter work than that. They're much more advanced than answering those questions. But that's ownership of your position. It also is a career path for people who we look at almost as a throwaway position. How can we advance them within their career? They don't all want to go to the back. Some of them actually like the front desk. They like to work with people. And how can we grow them in that position? Well, training them like this will do that for you. One of the points, I love what Natalie was saying about fear-free. And I do believe that it is part of the customer journey, the great customer service experience, because I've worked in practices for 40 years. I'm older than all of you people. And I can tell you that clients are embarrassed when their animals misbehave. And that is giving the client a bad experience. So if we're using fear-free skills to give the pet a good experience, we're also giving the client a good experience. And the other part of the equation is people are animals at the top of the food chain. Our behaviors are the same. Our limbic brain responses are the same. So when we learn for fear-free techniques, we can translate them to all the people that we are communicating with. And that is, a great way to leverage people and leverage their knowledge.
Wow. Thank you, Debbie. That's, you're covering a lot of points there. We're getting some great feedback coming in here. Thank you so much for your feedback. I was thinking we tend to be too transactional in celebrating the wins about what we do and how we do it. And we need to get back to that relational side of celebrating the wins about who we are and why we matter. And I think that's what I'm hearing you say, is finding that balance, but being intentional with different practices, not just assuming what we used to do will just work today. Mm-hmm. Next question I've got is for Dr. Marks. As a leader in promoting workplace culture, what are the most effective ways to build resilience and well-being within veterinary teams while maintaining high standards of care? It kind of just flows right into what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's like a great segue. So I think there's a few things that stick out to me, some of which I learned a little later in my practice ownership life, but we're always learning, right? So the first thing is, and I hope this resonates because it definitely did for a lot of my team, is we need to learn to embrace the introvert. Our industry is full of introverts, yet a lot of times we manage for an extrovert, and that's very uncomfortable for a lot of our team members. And now, granted, the three of us, I think, on this call are probably extroverts, at least partially, but many of the team members that we work with do not feel comfortable talking in a group setting, potentially. They don't feel comfortable in some of our team building social exercises that are planned. They prefer to have more of a digital communication, maybe asynchronous communication one-on-one with their manager. They prefer to have if you've done personality training, amazing, but if you haven't, at least a survey to figure out how do they work best? Maybe kind of going back to the CSR team, maybe they're CSRs that are phenomenal at their job, but they are more sort of in the background and they need more of a quiet cubicle to do their job and their SOP building and some of the strategy versus being in a very loud lobby. Maybe that's not how they work best, but do we ever ask? And when we do those things and when we find out and really customize their job to the best of our ability, right? We can't be perfect, but some of those work environment and how they prefer to be communicated with, we can empower them to maximize their job performance and their own just kind of personal job satisfaction. Because we're taking time to get to know them on a personal level and to really understand what makes them feel their best and do their best. And so I think we need to consider how we manage people based on how they recharge. And introverts are not shy people. I think that's sort of a misnomer of that personality style. It's that they just need a lot more quiet time to recharge, whereas extroverts recharge from human interaction. So when we think about it that way, maybe the next team building doesn't need to be at a loud bar for a Christmas party, right? It can be something where it's a sip and paint, or something a little bit more conducive to a survey maybe that you ask your team, because not everybody, again, recharges the same. And that can be somewhat of a bit of an obstacle for trust and team building in itself, because the introverts that don't come are sometimes looked down upon for not joining the team building activity when maybe that's just what wasn't comfortable for them. I think that's the first thing. I mean, the second thing is let's just take Fear Free as an example. When you are doing an initiative like becoming a fear-free hospital, or changing a PIM system, or bringing AI, maybe you've got an AI co-pilot you're bringing into your practice, something that big is not one person's job. So I always encourage starting with my team leads, and we all got together and said, okay, this is our ultimate goal. It's not going to happen tomorrow. We're going to break it down into sections, and we're going to do one section a month. And we're going to take that month to understand, what does the workflow look like? Where are the obstacles? We want everyone's feedback so that we can get this foundation secure before we build. Fear Free for us took a year. It's a lot easier now, but it was a huge hospital. And we took the time to make sure that what we were having our CSR team was not something that the technicians say, hey, that won't work for us in our role, right? So everybody needs to communicate. Baby steps, but everyone at your hospital needs to have a voice. Everybody. I think just sort of what Debbie was getting at is people don't feel heard or seen or valued. A lot of times it's because they don't even think they have an opinion that matters. And so everybody gets a voice. What I love to encourage, especially for teams that have a lot of introverts, is what's called Google ideating. And if you haven't done this before, it's a really awesome experience to try at a team meeting. Basically, let's just take an easy example of, we're going to implement a new paint color in the lobby. We want everyone to put on a Post-it note their perfect paint color. And it could be white with pink stripes, maybe it's unicorn wallpaper, whatever it is, but everybody gets a chance to just dream big and put it down. And it just is a way to get people to start thinking, even again, in some of these things, out of the box when you have bigger initiatives, but with anonymity and also with freedom. And I think that's an important thing for all these team initiatives. I'm a big believer in creating champions. Everybody has a passion in the practice. So whoever likes behavior, whoever wants fear free, whoever wants to be their social media champion, who's your cat advocate at your practice, everybody should have that role. And another big thing I'll just end on is sort of like we were talking about with our patients' physical and emotional mental health. Treat as a leader, as a manager, or practice owner, we need to treat physical and mental emotional health exactly the same. So when people take a mental health day, there's no questioning, right? It's a mental health day. That's their choice. We want to encourage healthy eating. We want to role model that. We want to order healthy staff lunches, right? Not get a bunch of crappy pizza. We want to role model a healthy living, because unfortunately, for a lot of our profession, we struggle with so much of that. And so provide resources for your team, even if they're not your own. If your team is wanting to work out, well, take a few minutes as a leader and figure out, are there gym partnerships that you can get? Can you find a running group in the area? Download some free yoga apps, whatever that looks like. But take a few minutes. Our most valuable part of our practice is our people. So take the time and invest in them.
Thank you, Dr. Marks. What I hear that there's, it's about people being valued and heard, and also meeting them where they're at. And that idea, 70% of people leave an organization because they haven't been valued and heard. Yeah, great advice. Great. And having done exactly what you said, I've done that, love it. Groups love it. And you have so much fun with that. So I've got the next question I'm going to throw up, just managing our time, is for Dr. Cornelius. As an entrepreneur and innovator, how do you approach leadership challenges while balancing business strategy and client-centric care in specialized fields, like one that you're particularly passionate about with palliative care? You're muted. Dr.
Thank you so much. Yeah. That's a really good question. Obviously, something like palliative care, is sometimes just requires a different kind of approach, a different kind of touch. Balancing those types of priorities within a specialized field like that really requires kind of a multi-faceted approach. The first with, leadership and leading with empathy. In palliative care, we deal with really emotionally charged situations. Trying to prioritize building a team that emphasizes compassion for clients, for patients, for each other, and other colleagues in the community. I encourage that they withhold judgment first in order to gain, a deeper understanding of each individual, utilizing, the practice of kind of meeting them where they're at to really figure out what their story is, to really kind of bolster that engagement. And you have a short amount of time to gain trust sometimes with families. And so the more open you are to listening to them and really figuring out what the bottom of their decisions are, you really find yourself in a much more helpful position. I think ensuring that we offer continuity of care. If the goal is to stay closely tied to the families and the pet in a palliative care situation, we want to ensure that we remain intact in that care unit. It's constantly aligned with the goal of maintaining or improving a pet's quality of life until the decision for euthanasia is made. And that also involves, strategic decision making on the business side, focusing on identifying long-term goals, expanding access to care, providing, or improving upon how we actually administer veterinary palliative care and addressing day-to-day operational needs at the same time, and providing work-life balance and team engagement. And by integrating innovative solutions, you set them up for engagement. And as Dr. Marks and Debbie had both, referred to, is inclusivity and being able to create those environments where there's a lot of psychological safety. And so people feel safe sharing their ideas, because the more ideas you're able to collect, the better ones you're going to get to choose from. And if you open up that arena and provide a safe environment for expression, I think it's really going to get you a lot further than you could be. So, and then of course, work-life integration, especially being in the space and the stressful nature of, providing end-of-life services. And really kind of just ultimately, I think success is just in harmonizing, operational efficiencies and really kind of heartfelt client and patient care.
Thank you, Dr. Cornelius. Yeah, that's it's such on one hand, such a rewarding area, because it just gives people such a beautiful ending if it's done well to something that you're losing a family member. So I'm going to go to you, Debbie. And Debbie, you've emphasized the importance of effective customer service. What role does personalized communication play in client retention, and how can practices elevate their service delivery standards?
We all are unique individuals. And when we feel, as Christie and Natalie both said, when we feel important and heard, then the opportunity for us to retain our clients increases exponentially. our staff certainly appreciates it, but our clients rarely get that kind of a service experience. I think about just on a daily basis, we run through a drive-through, somebody sticks a bag of food out the window at us, and we're lucky if we get a thank you. And if we have a napkin or two, we feel like we have hit the jackpot. And if our food is right, oh my gosh, that's a really exponential experience for us. But if we understand that creating a customized experience where somebody drives into your parking lot and you know them, you've known all the animals that they've had in the past, as Christie's talking about, giving palliative care and euthanizing family members, but remembering those family members fondly and talking about them. Because, over the years, as working the front desk as much as I did as a manager, I would have people call me who would go back to work after their pet had been euthanized or had passed away. And their coworkers were like, "What is wrong with you? It's just a cat." And they would call that hospital and they would get one of me or one of my team on the phone, and we would understand. We would understand that this was family, and we would give them, reassurance that we didn't think they were nuts. We knew what they were talking about. We had all been there. We were all hurt as much as they did when we lost our pets. So we were the voice that listened to them. And I feel like that is so important when we are paying close attention to people, when we're listening to subtle nuances, when we're looking at simple things like looking at your client and noticing if their hands are arthritic, and then saying, let's give you a bottle that you actually can open, or let's give you an injectable drug so you don't have to open a bottle at all and try to pill your cat. Let's figure out how to make things easier for you, because that is the observation part of great service. And people feel so special when that happens. We all do, when somebody pays attention to us. When you start to do that for your clients, what you'll notice is there's a diminishment in pushback of service requests. Like your pet needs this, this, and this. Well, somebody who's you've paid deep attention to, who you listened to intently, they're going to trust you more than somebody who says, well, I am the authority. You are the client. You're supposed to listen to me. And this is the dictate from on high. You're immediately going to get pushback on that. So learning how to be respectful of other people's feelings. We mentioned a little bit about conflict resolution, but so many times, especially with young veterinarians, and of course, I've not been there, but I've been around a lot of young veterinarians, hired a lot of new grads in my time. The immediate response to any time a client pushes back a little bit or questions is, well, they don't trust my medicine. I am the doctor after all. I have all this education and all this debt, and now you're not going to listen to me. And what we have to do is realize that the client just wants to learn. And when we change our attitude toward that client and say, okay, I appreciate the fact that you're asking questions. I want to make sure I'm educating you, so that you understand it. I feel like that is such an important part of making connections with people and having them stay with our practice. As a consultant, I go into hospitals, and one of the first questions practice owners will typically ask me is like, how can we get more clients? And I went, how are you keeping the ones you've got? What is your retention rate? Because when we start, somebody's new with us, they don't know us, and they're more difficult because they're like, oh, I don't trust you. You're a new person. 10 years into this, we've seen all kinds of things with their animals. We've been through, multiple events with them. That trust is there if we've done it well. And those clients, they think we walk on water. And that's what we have to keep remembering too. That's the other part of this equation. We have a tendency in our profession to focus on the negative, and that's a human nature thing. But we do so much good, and people think so highly of our profession and their doctors and the staff when we do this right. We really need to, at the end of the day, celebrate those things, and that will keep your staff around too.
Thank you, Debbie. Yeah, it's one of the word that comes to mind as I'm listening to you is curiosity, but not curiosity the way the world has turned it into, but what I would call unconditional curiosity, which would be curiosity without opinion, expectation, and judgment, starting with myself. And that fear of those new practices, that's fear, just taking them, hijacking them. But that idea of we've lost the ability to just be, as a professional mediator, that's one of my favorite openings. Is I'm just curious. I'm just curious. This guy's yelling at me, Karen. I'm just curious why you're so passionate about being overwhelmed. Well, you kind of are. And there's such simplicity in things that we made so complex.
Yes. I was interviewing a young veterinarian one day, and her father was a physician, human physician in Detroit. And she asked him, as she was going through veterinary school, don't you get frustrated because your clients don't comply? And he said, be curious, not furious. And that stuck with me. And I love the quote because it's true. We judge people. We assume that they're not following instructions. Same for our staff. That they're just lazy, they don't want to do the work, but we're never curious enough to find out what is the cause that they can't comply, or maybe we didn't train them well. And that was usually one of my remarks when I would find out one of my staff was not doing something right. I was like, that's on me. I am your trainer. That's my fault. Let's go fix that.
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Hey, just a couple of things from Annie Jones says here, back to what you were talking about, Dr. Marks, not to mention fear-free is also wonderful for promoting hands-free radiology. We don't stress enough the danger of radiation exposure. And Kristen, she said, as an industry, we don't utilize our people to their full ability, including technicians as well as CSRs. It's often difficult to convince practice owners to trust in the abilities of the people they work with. Interested. Just wanted to share those with you guys. And thank you for your comments. And please feel free to ask questions in the chat. Really appreciate you guys being with us and being part of the conversation. So I want to go now to Dr. Marks. And the question I have for you is that your experience shows the value of client education, obviously. How can practices use education to empower pet owners or pet parents, enhance compliance, and build, I think the word of the day here seems to be, is the next one, build trust during consultations. There seems to be a common denominator coming out here without trust.
Yeah. Yeah. And I want to build a little bit off of what Debbie's been talking about. And for education to stick, there's a few things that have to happen. So first, the stage has to be set on the phone, in the exam room, wherever you're meeting that pet parent, that it isn't this historical, I'm in my white coat, I'm talking and standing and delivering this information one directionally, and my client's just going to sit there and go, yes, doctor. I hate that. That's sort of how we were taught back in the day. Yes, I'm pet old. But I'm so happy that that is not the direction that a lot of veterinarians are going in regards to their communication strategy. And so I love to sort of visually create this exam room when I'm with a client. And that is, I always have coffee with me in the morning. I'm a Starbucks addict. My dog jumps off and knocks my headphones out. I was getting
Only
some
on a veterinary.
I know I was getting some fear-free treatment right there with my dog.
There you go. I love it.
But I like to think of it as we're sitting across the table and we both maybe have a cup of coffee, and I'm the medical advocate and expert in the exam room, right? So I'm taking physical exam findings and diagnostics and interpreting them and giving you education around them. But equally important, the pet parent is the medical advocate at home. I rely on them for all of the compliance and treatment. I rely on them for acknowledging subtle changes in behavior and clinical signs. I rely on them to talk to me about quality of life. I mean, we are a team. It's not one directional, it's two directional conversation. So when I approach clients that way, you can instantly see body language relax. If a client has come into the exam room sort of in this position, they start to lean in. People start to soften and ask questions proactively. They will often be much more vulnerable in disclosing ways that they can't be compliant. People who have autoimmune diseases, people that can't see well, people that have previous trauma from having to medicate an animal in their past that has left them very nervous and scared about doing something, right? We're all driven by fear. But it's a wonderful, to your point, Michael, it's a wonderful way to set trust at the table. And so that opens us up to educating and to reading how that pet parent wants to receive information. We have to remember as veterinary teams that everything we deliver verbally, almost all of it is lost when that family leaves the exam room, literally, which is very devastating to veterinarians who spend a ton of time giving dissertations on diseases and then most of it's gone, or you realize you told the nanny and the family never received the information, right? So what we have to think about is that families need multiple formats of education. So it's fine for you to talk about diabetes, but they need written instructions. They need YouTube videos. They need a resource library on your website. They need all that reinforced. And you don't have to recreate the wheel. There are plenty of educational resources, packages that you can buy for your hospital to really have an up-to-date, robust education library. The second thing to remember is that education today is typically not in print. If we look at everything that is viewed, it is all video, right? Imagery or video. So take the time now. If you're a late bloomer to social media, it's okay. Don't fret. But take the time now to start getting authorizations from pet parents and videoing little blurbs of what happens in your exam room. Maybe it's cool lesion. Maybe you're doing an insulin demo. Maybe you're showing fearful behavior. Maybe you're showing why your exam is different at your practice from another practice. Whatever it is, little 15 to 30 second blurbs that you can add to your educational library, post on social media, send to a client via text, whatever that looks like, that's what people want to view. They want video. So get that now. Most pet parents, right? They need to authorize that, but most pet parents are willing to do that, especially if you make their family member a celebrity in some way. And then the final thing that I just want to talk about is proactivity in education. So it's certainly for me, and one of the biggest things I've learned is, and not in a good situation, is that we don't want to be the one that a client comes to and then asks why you didn't talk about this, right? And have a reactive conversation. So if you are doing puppy and kitten exams quite a bit at your practice, this is time to talk about breed risks, right? It's time to talk about financial strategies for paying for pet care, not waiting until you have a high-risk allergy breed. They've had 3 episodes of allergies, then they want to get pet health insurance and they can't get insured for allergies, right? There's a lot of scenarios like this, but education needs to be proactive. So talk about screening, talk about proactive wellness, preventive care. If you look at all of the data from millennial pet parents, our largest demographic, one of the top things that they want is wellness and preventive care. They want to know what they can do as much as possible from home, right? But we can work that way. We can have that empowered relationship, but giving them the strategies and not us being the last one to talk about it with them. We want to be the resource, or at least a trusted resource in their ecosystem, not the one, in last year, 35% of pet parents never went to the vet at all, right? So we don't want to wait until that pet parent comes, 3 years later and says, oh, well, another vet said something about this. And then I went on Dr. Google and I went in a chat room with my neighborhood condo association and found out the information, right? So we need to be proactive and think about that when we're creating a resource library, but it all starts with that 2-directional conversation in the exam room.
Thank you, Dr. Marks. That's a very fresh way to look at education. Mm-hmm. Make it personal, but also remember to make it influential, that it can actually affect change and the sort of things we're talking about. Our time, you guys, it feels like we have just raced through this hour. I can't believe it is. We're at the top of the hour, and we're going to need to wrap up. I want to thank our panel for an amazing night. Debbie Boone, Dr. Natalie Marks, and Dr. Christie Cornelius. As I said, you guys were amazing. So much insight, best practices. You brought your puppies to the show. That was awesome. And secondly, I'd like to thank all of our attendees for your time and participation. Without you, we don't grow together and we don't set each other up for success. A reminder, please, to like, share, review us on your favorite social media, and make sure you do that so you can be a part of someone else's success as well. So until next time, keep striving for excellence and make a positive impact in the lives of your patients and pet parents. Mike Walker, until next time.